Good early afternoon. Happy Halloween. Dave Larder, greetings from spectacular Phoenix, the hottest Halloween on earth. I'm Andy Andrews. You joined us on the Blue Plate Special, and we're excited. This is anytime we have just kind of a different, odd day, there's just like excitement backstage. You know, everybody's just like, okay, something weird's going to happen today. And of course, you know, something weird happens here almost every day. Becky Ford Peavy, hi from Oregon. Margaret Davis Hope from chilly, sunny, northeast Mississippi. You know, I heard you guys were like freezing yesterday, and I was like, yeah, here we go. And here, it's cold here today. What's the temperature, Matt? What is the temperature? Because it's freezing. I'm just curious.
It's in the 50s. 58.
58. See what I'm saying? It is freezing here. 58 degrees. I'm sure the Michigan and Minnesota people would disagree. But it's cold to us. It's a wet cold. It's a wet cold. Ron Reams, hey buddy, how are you doing? Nancy Bergman from Monte Vista, Colorado. Marcy Crossy Taylor, cold but sunny Pasco, Washington. It's up to 31. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm going to Michigan tomorrow just for the day. I just want to experience extreme cold. So, Sandy Atkins, it's rainy in El Salvador. So, Ron Kerner from Schertz, Texas. Larry Pratt from beautiful Port Orchard, Washington. You know, I don't think of Washington State as a cold place. I don't know why, but every time, you know, somebody's like, it's 39 degrees, it's 20 degrees, it's 26 degrees. I'm like, okay, I don't know why I don't think of Washington State as very cold, even though it's way up there, you know. I don't know why. I've got some mental block against Christy Woods, my sister. How are you doing? I wonder if Christy's at work today. You know, she works right down here at Red and White. So it's like right across the street, up just a little bit. Tim Broadhurst. Oh, how are you doing? Tim, Grandma Kelly, and Bridger the Golden Mountain Dog here in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. Well, you have picked a good day, Tim, Kelly, Bridger. You've picked a good day to be here on Halloween. Oh, by the way, what are y'all going as tonight? Anybody going as anything? I want to show you you want to see my costume? Okay, here it is. Who am I? You don't know who I am? It's me. It's me. It's Andy. I always wondered how Clark Kent got away with that. But look at this. But it's me. It's me. And for years, I always thought, that's just amazing. Like, you know, Superman puts on a pair of glasses, no one knows who he is, but look how that works. Can't tell it's me, can you? But it is. How about that? Happy Halloween. Well, Christy is at work. So for the studio audience, if you would like to go see my sister Christy and tell her hello after we get through here, she's right down there at Red and White. She's the beautiful one that looks like a 25-year-old goddess. Tim Broadhurst, you guys are going as Zeus and Aphrodite. Why would Bridger want to dress up like Aphrodite? Oh, it's Kelly that'll be dressing up like Aphrodite. Got it. Well, that'd be perfect for you guys. Ken, Barbie, JFK, Jackie, Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor, Zeus, Aphrodite. That's you too. That's you. Tim and Kelly are the two most beautiful people that I know. As a couple. You know, I mean, there are some couples where the woman is gorgeous and the man is obviously charming. And that's like Polly and me. You know, because Polly is gorgeous. She's beautiful. She's clever. She's witty. And then you look at me and you go, he must have had a good personality. Or you go, that boy can sell. He is a salesman. Dwayne English, Chile, San Antonio. Hey, let me tell you this before we get going. For those of you who got the professional noticer this morning, the podcast email, which if you're on the VIP list, which all it takes to get on the VIP list is go on andyandrews.com and put your name and email address in there. But if you're on the VIP list, you have that delivered every Tuesday morning to your inbox. And so the professional noticer, this week we had kind of a departure. Usually we'll interview somebody, but we interviewed ourselves this week because we thought, you know, we always have people on who are talking about some of the things they've produced, some of the things they've made, and, you know, we're always interested in that. And then we thought, you know, we're doing some amazing stuff here behind the scenes that's going out, and one of them is wisdomharbor.com. You know, that is a whole different company we have. You know, you're watching this today. We do this on Thursdays as well. We do it on Tuesdays at 12:15 and Thursdays at 12:15. But on Tuesdays, it goes out everywhere. And on the Thursday show is just on wisdomharbor.com. But wisdomharbor.com is a streaming service, a very inexpensive streaming service, I might add, $27.99 for the entire year for a single membership. And this is going into schools, businesses, lots of homes. And our stated goal is to create the next greatest generation, starting with your family, with your hometown, and your school system. And so we talked about that a little bit on this week's Professional Noticer and showed some examples of some of the stuff because, you know, harbors have docs. And so Wisdom Harbor has an audiobooks doc, a writer's doc, a musician's doc, a how do I doc, you know, all this kind of stuff. And the content is delivered by Grammy winners, comedians, coaches, CEOs, chefs, speakers. It's just, it's pretty amazing. And the thing we do is create conversations between family members and classrooms, and these 5 and 6 minute pieces are the core of those conversations. And so what we also did on this particular professional noticer is provide a link that'll last for a week, and it is to 10 complete pieces from wisdomharbor.com. Now there's hundreds of them, okay, but we selected 10 that kind of have to do with Halloween or fall or whatever. And so you can see those 10 without subscribing, but we hope you will subscribe. After all, it's cheap. But so that's on, if you go to wisdomharbor.com/family, wisdomharbor.com/family, you can see all those. And it's also in the chat box if you're watching. So we thought we'd give you a little background on Halloween. Not a little background. We did some deep research to figure out where Halloween comes from. What are some of the stupid things that we've seen? You know, we're always into stupid here. You know, stupid equals funny to us. And so we're going to go over some Halloween stuff. Then we're going to have the traditional reading of a Halloween story that I wrote. And so we'll do that in a little bit. But first of all, let's go to Halloween's origins. Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. And the Celts who lived a couple of thousand years ago, mostly in the area that is now Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France, which is where they celebrated their New Year on November 1st. But those northern France, Ireland, United Kingdom, that is where they started then putting out groups of 5 singers and 20 dancers, and they started going around the world, and they were women, and so they called them Celtic women. And they danced near the river, and so they called it river dance. I just made that part up, but it sounded good, didn't it? Didn't that sound good? But November 1st marked the end of summer and the end of the harvest and the beginning of a dark, cold winter. And it was a time of the year that was also associated, believe it or not, with human death. And so the Celts believed that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. And on the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, and it was believed that the ghost of dead people returned to earth. So these were obviously very educated, wise, reasoned people. Now, by AD 43, the Roman Empire had conquered the majority of that territory. Okay, so for 400 years, they ruled the Celtic lands. 2 festivals of Roman origin were combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was called Feralia, and this was a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. You getting a little string of kind of same stuff going through: dead, 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 passing of the dead, gateway to the dead, blurring lines of the dead. So the second was a day to honor Pomona, who is the Roman goddess of fruit. I don't really get the connection between dead people and fruit, okay, but evidently it was kind of the same thing. It was like Columbus Day and President's Day, and so they just decided to combine it all, I suppose. Now, in Scotland, fortune tellers recommended that an eligible young woman name a hazelnut for each guy who was trying to date her, to name a hazelnut. Like there's a hazelnut named Dan, a hazelnut named Jacob, a hazelnut named Kevin. And so she would now it doesn't say she'd write their name, she just named the hazelnut after them. This is my nut, Kevin. Now, once she named them all, she would toss these nuts into the fireplace. Now, here's where it gets kind of blurry. The nuts that burned to ashes, rather than popping or exploding, represented the girl's future husband. Unless the nut that burned away symbolized a love that would not last. And it was the one that was left. It was husband. So to be perfectly clear, when you put the nuts into the fire, if the nut was left or if the nut burned up, that was your future husband. These people didn't have a lot to do, I'm thinking. You know, we were looking at Arrowhead the other day, and Polly said, my gosh, look at the detail on that. How long would it take with a rock to carve out an arrowhead? How long would that take? And I'm like, well, it isn't like they had a lot to do. You know, it's like, I'm going to carve an arrowhead today. I'm going to chop up an arrowhead today. What did you do? What did you do? Well, all day I chopped the right side of an arrowhead. And I guess when you have 5, you go hunting. And then when you're out of them, you spend 3 weeks chopping arrowheads again. I don't know. But it isn't like they had a lot to do. They weren't, you know, what are you going to do today? Well, when I get home from the office, I'm going to build a couple of arrowheads. I don't, you know. So anyway, these people didn't have a lot to do. Now, another tale had it that if a young woman ate now this is all around Halloween. If a young woman ate a sugary concoction made out of walnuts, hazelnuts, and nutmeg before bed on Halloween night, she would dream about her future husband. Now, you look like a young lady. You look, how old are you? Give me, are you like, you're 12. Okay, Mom, if you would get her a concoction of walnuts, hazelnuts, and some other kind of nuts in there, and then ask her who she dreamed about tonight. Okay, but let me know in 10 years if that worked out. Okay, I would really like to know. Don't forget the nutmeg. Gotta have nutmeg on. Now, here's another way you can find out. Here's another way. Young women tossed apple peels over their shoulders. They would peel an apple and have it all in one peeling, right? All in one peeling. And then toss the peel over their shoulder, and the peeling would fall on the floor in the shape of their future husband's initials. Or, well, Halloween is a busy time, isn't it? Especially if you're wanting to find out who you're going to marry. Now here, all right. Or you can peer at, you can look at egg yolks floating in a bowl of water and stand in front of a mirror in a darkened room holding a candle looking over your shoulder and find your future husband's face in the egg yolk. Okay, so here's what we got. So tonight, you got a busy night ahead of you, young lady. No time for trick-or-treating. Okay, you're going to be eating walnuts and hazelnuts and nutmeg and peeling an apple. And before you go to bed, throw it over your shoulder. And, you know, you may take a picture with your cell phone so you can examine later where it lay, find those little intricate initials. But don't forget, before you go to bed, to float an egg yolk in a bowl of water and get in a darkened room and look at it in a mirror to find the face of your future husband. Now, you'll be married before you're 17. Oh my God, no. You'll be married before you're 21. No, 30, 40. You'll be married. Okay, yeah. Your mother says 40. Your daddy says you don't have to get married till you're 60. So, now, the other Halloween rituals were competitive. All right. So now you're going to compete for a guy. So you're going to stand next to somebody with their own egg yolk? No. At some Halloween parties, now this is hundreds of years ago. At some Halloween parties, the first guest to find a burr on a chestnut hunt would be the first to marry. Now that just seems stupid. I mean, I'll just say, you can kind of see the egg yolk, darkened room, floating in a bowl of water, backwards in a mirror. I mean, that took some thought. Okay, but there was some mama that was surrounded by 20 kids, and they were driving her nuts. And everybody had a bucket, and everybody was supposed to be searching for chestnuts. And you know the burr that chestnut is wrapped in, it's open on the ground, and the chestnuts. And so some mama was being driven nuts by these kids, and she had told them several times, "Go, hurry up, and come on!" And finally, she said, "The first one to find a burr will be the first one to get married." Whew, they were gone. Except for the boy kids, because they didn't want to get married anyway. And they just stayed driving her crazy. But I mean, I guess, and so, I mean, how else do you think that got started? First one to find a burr gets married. Okay, first one to see a Blue Jays, first one going to get married. First one to make it to the creek is going to be the first one to get married. I mean, that's just crap. That's just like, let's just make it up as we go. Okay, but it's all with Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit. Now, the symbol of Pomona is the apple. And so the incorporation of Pomona and the apple, Pomona, the goddess of fruit, into the celebration Samhain, or, early Halloween. Pomona, apple, Halloween. This probably is leading to the tradition that is practiced today on Halloween. And this tradition was invented by a guy named Bob, who put apples in a big tub of water. And Bob explained that the point of the game was not to use your hands, but to grab the apple from the water using only your teeth. So throughout the community, for the invention of the game, he was known as Apple Bob. And the game came to be called Bobbing for Apples. No, yeah, I just made that part up. But it sounded good, didn't it? It sounded good. But the goddess of fruit and the apple and the bobbing for apples is all connected. Now, the guy who invented it named Bob, I made that part up. But I thought it added to the story. So now, some parties, here we go again. At some parties, the first successful apple bobber would be the first person down the aisle. Be the first person. Can you identify a little fixation here on somebody wanting to get married, or somebody wanting to marry their kids off or something? Okay, stick your head in this water. First one to come out with an apple in your mouth, first one to get married. I mean, they were into that, I guess. I read in the Epoch Times yesterday about a couple that had been married 84 years. They celebrated their 84th anniversary yesterday. And he met her when she was 9, and he was 13, and she was 9. And he told her when they met, I'm going to marry you one day. 13 and 9. And then 4 years later, when she was 13 and he was 17, they got married. They had 12 kids, 6 boys, 6 girls. Of those 12 kids, 9 are still alive. And she is 98, and he is 102 right now. And one of those daughters is paralyzed. And every night, that mom and daddy call their daughter who's paralyzed and sing to her. Every single night. But my point, I suppose, is at 102 and 98, they probably participated in some of these Halloween festivals. And she probably, the only reason she got married when she was 13 is because when she ate walnuts and hazelnuts and nutmeg, one night she saw his face and said, well, there it is. And then they were bobbing for apples, and he came out with the apples. There it is again. And then her mama said, okay, let's be sure. And then put an egg yolk in a bowl of water and put her in a dark room and said, here's a mirror. And I looked and see who, and she said, it's him. And so they let her get married when she was 13, because it was like, okay, there you go. In one popular version of bobbing for apples, girls would mark the apples before placing them into the water. And so apples float, and as the girls' potential sweethearts ducked in to catch the fruit with their teeth, future marriages were determined. See, I'm thinking Halloween and marriage has never sounded so connected as it does today. I mean, you're lucky if you're not going to be married by the time you're out of here. Girls also continued the tradition of, well, we told you about this, using the apple peels. Communities in New England, every fall, communities in New England would prepare mountains of apples for these great, big, huge kettles of apple butter that were put up for the winter. And so young ladies would peel the apple in a single unbroken strip, toss the peel over her shoulder, and see what letter the peel formed on the third. This is the initial of her future husband. But the thing that nobody ever said is, they're making mountains of apple butter out of a mountain range of apples. And so can't you imagine these girls sitting there feeling Frank, I don't want to marry him. Let me peel another apple. Bobby, nope. Peel again. Johnny, okay, I'm good. I mean, they're peeling thousands of apples. How many choices do they get? The celebration of Halloween became extremely limited in colonial New England. Now we're going to America. And because of these rigid Protestant beliefs, like no television and no movies. I mean, in colonial New England, the parents, like, no television. I mean, these kids could not watch television, and they could not go to the movies. And so Halloween was much more common, not in colonial New England, but Halloween celebrations were more common below the grit line. Do you know what the grit line is? Now, you're 12. You should have studied the grit line in geography or history. Are you familiar with the grit line? See, the grit line has also been called a sweet tea line, but if you look at a map of the United States, there is a section of the United States that they have grits in the restaurants, and then another section there's no grits. Now, if today we were headed north on I-65, or just any highway headed north, and let's say we get off the interstate in Huntsville, okay, and go to a cafe, order grits, you're going to get grits. Then you go up in Nashville, you order grits, you get grits. Then on up into, Kentucky, you're going to get grits. But there's a point, and you'd have to start getting off at every exit to order. There's a point where at one exit you're going to get grits, you're going to get sweet tea, and at the very next exit, they're not going to have it. And so, if you marked that and then went over to the next northern road and you did the same thing going north and you put a dot on the map in between the exits where they have grits and don't have, and then go over on this northern road and do that. If you make your dots and form a graph and put a line, that is the grit line in America. You live either above the grit line or below the grit line. Now, this is my theory. This is my own personal theory. But I think it's more than a theory. I think that may be a law. I think that may be a law. It's like the law of gravity, the law of the static grit line in America. Anyway, Halloween was celebrated more openly below the grit line. Now, by the 20s and 30s, Halloween had become this secular holiday. It didn't really have anything to do with your religion, but it was this secular, community-centered holiday. Had parades and town-wide Halloween parties, and nobody's thinking about getting married with apple peels or egg yolks or nuts. But despite the best efforts of many schools and communities, vandalism began to plague some celebrations during this time. Vandalism. People were taking soap and marking up windows. They were taking eggs and wasting them on the doors of grouchy neighbors. They were taking toilet paper and decorating the trees 2 months before Christmas. Firecrackers to test the integrity of mailboxes. Vandalism. Between 1920 and 1950, the practice of trick-or-treating came into, and trick-or-treating was a relatively inexpensive way for an entire community to share the Halloween celebration. In theory, families could also prevent tricks being played on them by providing the neighborhood children with small treats. So that's how this new American tradition was born and continued to grow. It's just like trick or treat. That's what the kids say, trick or treat. And most kids are so little, they don't even know what they're saying, trick or treat. And so, here we go, But most kids aren't prepared for, no treat. We'll see you later. Most kids aren't prepared for that. But you get you a good 13-year-old who's a little bit too old to be putting a sheet on and saying, I'm a ghost, give me some candy. And they're more into the tricks than they are the treats. That's why you watch somebody like her. She may look young, but she is a young woman, and she may decide, I would rather throw toilet paper in trees than get a piece of hard candy. I'm just saying. And I'm with you. You know, um, there are a lot of tricks that can be played on Halloween. Now, let me just say this: don't. I mean, I know if you're 12 or 13 or 14 or 15 or 16, it sounds like a good idea. Don't. I mean, I know you got eggs. I know you got toilet paper. I know you got magic markers. You got chalk. You got cherry bombs. You got, don't. And let me tell you why. Now, I know you want to, because I know you've heard the stories. I know your parents have told you about the time they went out on Halloween and, and put the bag on the guy's porch and rang the doorbell and lit it on fire and he came to... I know you've heard all that. Okay, I know you've heard all that. But don't. Because back in the day, when your mama and daddy and I did things like that, we didn't get caught very much. And if we did get caught, somebody called our parents. Today, they call the police. Don't do it. There are so many cameras, and even people who don't have security cameras have game cameras. They have deer cameras, and they'll set them up outside, and you'll get caught, and you won't get away with it. And nobody calls your parents today. They call the police. So you're not going back to somebody's house and laughing about what you did. You're going to jail. So I'm just saying, times have changed. You're going to have to watch a movie about it. You're going to have to listen to stories about it. But think, don't do this. Or they'll shoot you. Dina Kilpatrick says, yeah, they'll shoot you. But trick or treat, the treat part's okay. Today, Americans spend an estimated $6 billion annually on Halloween, which makes it the country's second largest commercial holiday. After what? What's the first largest commercial holiday? That's right, St. Patrick's Day. No, it's not. It's Christmas. But Halloween is second after Christmas. Halloween movies have a long history of being box office hits. Halloween it's a culture thing. Halloween movies include Halloween, which is based on that 78 original film, Halloween, which was directed by John Carpenter and starred Donald Pleasance and Jamie Lee Curtis. Remember? And these slasher films, Halloween, it inspired other slasher films like Scream, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, and It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. All those slasher films, all those horror movies. So among the superstitions, though, one of the oldest and most enduring is the superstition of the black cat. Crossing a black cat will bring on bad luck. A lot of people believe that witches avoided detection by turning themselves into black cats. And a black cat crossing your path might very well be on a mission from a witch. And just as easily, it could be the devil in disguise, and nobody wants to cross paths with the devil. But this explains why a black cat crossing your path was considered a bad omen. Now, this notion, it started at the beginning, but it continued on into the Renaissance, when a black cat crossing your path might have indicated that a witch had sent her helper to do you harm. So many fearful peasants of the day might might have hurried, to the nearest church or something and paid for a priest to bless them. To give the priest 5 shillings to bless them and rid them of any curse that might have been laid by the cat. Of course, this was a source of income for the church. So, church is like saying, yeah, this will help. And yeah, you should be scared. I mean, it's a source of income. So the churches are encouraging this, right? Yeah, you should be scared of these cats. Yeah, come back if another one crosses your path. Now, jack-o'-lanterns. A jack-o'-lantern initially referred to the natural phenomenon of ignis fatuus, the flickering marsh lights that appear over swamps and bogs, and to this day they can often lead a traveler astray, thinking, okay, there's a house through there, let me go in. But these marsh lights are known as will-o'-the-wisp, and Irish folk stories, it's actually gas is what it is, but Irish folk stories offer explanations for this phenomenon. In the 18th century, here's the explanation, which I love this explanation. In the 18th century, a man named Jack, or Stingy Jack, was said to be this mean blacksmith who tricked the devil. And in return for tricking the devil, he was given something to light his lantern, something he would put inside his pumpkin to light it up. And you know what he was given? You know what he tricked the devil? You know what the devil gave him? An ember from hell. I mean, of everything we've talked about today, that's the creepiest to me. Now you need a light? Yeah, here, I've got an ember from hell right here. So anyway, there's the backstory on Halloween. Now, I am going to read you our traditional reading of a Halloween story. This is from my book, Return to Sawyerton Springs. Don't go to your laptops. This is out of print, so you can't get it. But you know what? We are doing the audio book of all of this, and it's going to be on Wisdom Harbor, on the audiobooks doc. So remember, $27.99 for the entire year, and you got all the audiobooks, all the music, all the stuff. And so check out wisdomharbor.com/family just to see the Halloween stuff. But here we go. This one, it's chapter 13. How about that? Halloween story, chapter 13. You know, if you took a 13 and you divided it into 13 pieces and closed your eyes and spread it in the sand and then kicked it with your feet and then opened your eyes, you'll probably see the face of who you're going to marry. I just made that up. Okay, here we go. Who stole my golden arm? At that moment, I was not happy with the decision I'd made that afternoon to spend the night in the old hazy place. Who stole my golden arm? Kevin Perkins held a flashlight to his face and was making an effort to scare me. It was working. Suddenly, he shut off the light, grabbed at me, and screamed, "You stole my golden arm!" In a split second, my hands were over my face, my leg kicked into the air, and as I lurched against the wall and screamed, and then, slowly, I gathered my composure and explained my actions, which had obviously been for the benefit of the story, the better to scare everyone else. It was a lame excuse, and Lee Payton said so. The Luker boys, Steve and Roger, agreed as Kevin looked at me smugly. "You were spooked," he said. "You're always spooked when we come here." He was right. I had been in the house 100 times, but it still gave me the willies. Located at the end of a logging road, Behind town, the dilapidated old structure had been abandoned for years. It was covered with wandering fingers of kudzu and honeysuckle, which only added to its creepy appearance. The house held a sinister attraction for kids. Despite the pitchfork murder that had supposedly taken place in the attic at one time, we simply could not stay away. This night, however, was different. I could have easily stayed away. In fact, on this particular night, I would have rather been anywhere else in the world, because this night was the 31st of October, Halloween. For the first time any of us could remember, Halloween was happening on a Friday. That meant, of course, no school the next day. We were given permission by our parents to camp out in the Peytons' backyard. The tent was there. We, on the other hand, were not. Somehow the five of us had goaded each other into spending the night at the old Hazy place. We considered ourselves too mature for dressing up and begging candy from the neighbors. Not that we didn't get candy anyway. Every Halloween it amazed us that there were adults so naive as to leave a bowl of candy on the porch with a note saying, "Take one, please." 2 or 3 spots like that and the kid was done for the night. We sat in a tight circle, close together in what we had decided was once the living area. There was a crumbling fireplace at one end of the room with an ancient sofa nearby. Directly behind us was the small staircase that led to the attic. "Dad will have a conniption fit if he finds out about this," Roger said. We all looked at him. Steve, his older brother, spoke first. "You know what I'm going to do if he finds out?" "Kill me?" Roger said. "Right," Steve confirmed. We were quiet for a while. I, for one, was not enjoying myself and would have gladly paid Roger to go get his dad. The stories were beginning to have an effect on me. I had had enough golden arms, hooks left hanging on car doors, and ghost girls being picked up on the highway wearing prom dresses. I was ready to leave and about to suggest it when Lee picked up the conversation. "Reckon why she did it?" he asked. We all looked at him. We knew what he was talking about. In 1951, so the story went, Martha Hazy stuck her 4th husband, George, with a pitchfork in the attic. "She must have been really upset," Lee said. "Not as upset as George, I bet," Kevin said, laughing nervously. "Her first 3 husbands died from eating poison mushrooms," I said, repeating what I'd heard from Charles Raymond Floyd at school. "Well, then why'd she kill poor George?" Roger asked. Steve smirked, probably because he wouldn't eat the mushrooms. "My dad said she cut off his head," Lee offered. In our hearts, we knew that Lee's father had said nothing of the kind, that Lee had fabricated this part of the story, but no one challenged him. Because the information, according to Lee, had come from his dad. Crediting one's parents with a wild tale has always been the primary method for avoiding the scorn of peers. I didn't say it. My dad said it. "Martha Hazy," I mused. "What kind of name is Hazy?" "I bet you God gave her that name," Kevin said, "'cause it rhymes with crazy. You know she escaped from an insane asylum." Kevin made the sentence as a fact. He was not asking us if Crazy Hazy had escaped. He was telling us that indeed she had. He continued, "She dug up George's head and still carries it around everywhere she goes." I was about to tell Kevin that he was full of it when he added, "At least that's what my mother told me." "Somebody saw her down at Henley's Hardware not too long ago," I said. "She was looking around in the pitchfork section." The other guys looked at me. Their eyes were the size of silver dollars and their breath was coming in rapid bursts. They knew I was lying as well as I did, but as we embellished the tale, it was like an addiction. There was no stopping us. The tension became unbearable. Past the point of casually getting up and going home, we were terrified. Suddenly, Roger began to sing. 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. Take one down, pass it around. As his quivering voice faded away, we felt even more uneasy. It had been a pitiful attempt to change the subject. Roger was embarrassed, and we were embarrassed for him. Only Roger's brother Steve said anything to him. "Don't be so stupid. If you ever do anything that stupid again, I'll..." Without warning, Steve's face went white. His mouth kept moving, but there were no words, no sound. He was looking at a spot directly behind me. I looked at Roger and Lee. Their eyes were now fixed on the same spot. Roger was on his back, trying to push himself away with his legs. Lee didn't move. Kevin started a weird moaning sound that seemed to be an odd combination of crying and begging for mercy. As Steve continued to mouth non-existent words, I quickly turned around and almost fainted. There, sliding slowly through the window, was a pitchfork. My mouth was like sand, and my heart was about to come through my chest. It was true. All the stories we'd heard were true. There really was a crazy Hazy. She really did kill her husband. Now she was after us. Why had I come here? Why hadn't I gone trick-or-treating with my sister? Oh, if I was only wearing my Lone Ranger costume. But it was too late. We were goners. "Ah!" Kevin screamed. "It's George's head!" Indeed, something that looked very much like a man's head had come flying through the window and rolled up against Lee's leg. A large percent of the time when one speaks of hair standing on end, it is merely a figure of speech. In this case, it was not. Our hair did stand on end. We curdled blood with our screams, and before we left the house, we ran in place for a few seconds like mice in a cartoon. We didn't stop running until we were safely in the Paytons' backyard. We were out of breath. We were still scared, but we were alive. To this day, I have never experienced sheer terror to match that Halloween. Even now, I break out into a sweat when I hear kids singing 99 Bottles of Beer. It wasn't until years later, I was in college, when I found out what had actually happened that night. My mom and dad had walked over to the Paytons with my sister, who was dressed as a dog. As the adults talked in the side yard, they saw us leaving the tent. Dr. Payton and my dad decided to follow. They had waited outside the window of the old Hazy place, listening to us talk in the living room. When the time was right, Dr. Payton stuck an old board slowly into the window. This is where I differ from my father's version. I still swear it was a pitchfork. But my dad said, "Where would we get a pitchfork in the middle of the night?" Then my dad threw a clump of roots into the room, and the rest is history. Because of that night, I never went into the old Hazy place again. That, I am sure, is exactly what our dads had intended. If so, they accomplished their goal. Still, it was a mean trick for a grown-up to play on a bunch of kids. It makes no difference that it was Halloween. It was dirty, rotten, heartless, and I can't wait for the chance to do something like that to my own boys one day. The end. All right. We appreciate you guys being here with us on this special Halloween version of the Blue Plate Special. We'll have something different for you this Thursday. And we want to remind you as we go, wisdomharbor.com/family. All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.